Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
The year is 3013. The galaxy is scintillating in the mellow light. Two galactic pilgrims seek out vistas in the samurai future to bring forth the unity of the cosmic shaman. Opening the door of the pantheon of mystics, the evil sorcerer wizard powers the engine of science, seeking to forever alter the sacred balance, traveling on effervescent balls of summer fire.
This week, what dreams may come.
In the year 1998, Robin Williams died.
Yeah, for the okay, let's get.
He's done a lot of films. It probably wasn't the first time.
Yeah, that's what I'll say. It probably wasn't the first time. I think he made it through Toys. You mentioned Toys, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that though because I haven't watched Toys yet. So this one is What Dreams May Come.
Yeah. Oh, it was actually released very close to the date. It was released in October.
Oh, okay.
If that's relevant to anyone.
Yes.
Yes. I did see this film really early, so that's a weird one. Anyway, I'm Luke.
This is Matt.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
We got it backwards a little bit today. So when I'll get into a little bit like when I first saw this movie and when I saw it later. But first off, when I first saw it, I was, 19? And, coming at it from the very Judeo-Christian perspective, right? So later, I could see it knowing more about Buddhism and Eastern things and so forth. So we brought in Buddhist author von Galt to kind of give us some perspective on that. Thanks for joining us again.
Hi, guys. I love being a Buddhist correspondent on these movies. They're my favorite. It's a nice break.
Yeah.
But I did see this. This is back opening night, and I kind of didn't realize this till I got to the end of the movie, but this is when you would go to be like, hey, this actor has a new film, let's go see it. Because it's like I remember there being a hook, and I was like, oh, I don't know who the director is. You looked at the filmography and he's done like almost nothing,
right?
Yeah, so it was like, hey, we're all going to go see the new Robin Williams film. This is like what, I don't know, follows Good Will Hunting precedes it, somewhere around then,
right? And
I saw it opening night and I hated it. I think I actually might have referred to this as like my least favorite movie for some time.
I saw it even younger than you because I think we got it out from the video store shortly after it came out. So maybe I was a little older, maybe like 10 or something. And again, looked at it from the very Christian perspective of heaven, hell, that sort of thing. I remember the imagery was really lodged itself in my brain.
Oh, that was a big
all the hell stuff, all the pink stuff. So that stuff stuck with me. But I found the film boring as hell because I was 20 years old.
Yeah, I was a senior in high school when I watched it in the theater, and I just remembered the imagery. I just really liked the imagery and the colors, the vibrant blue throughout the movie. That's really what I enjoyed about it. In terms of the storyline, I totally get the storyline completely from a Buddhist perspective, but for me, it wasn't really blowing my mind. It was just most of the images were beautiful.
I guess the thing for me is I felt the need to return to about 5 years ago when my wife went a little nutty for some time, and I was like, hey, there's this metaphysical movie about that kind of thing, and and then I was like, okay, now I'm really getting it. Then I knew more about Eastern philosophy, religions, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And at that point, I was like, okay, now I totally get this movie. I mean, it's not a movie for, I guess, someone under the age of 25, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it the age for someone who's 31?
I definitely liked it more this time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the sort of film I'm going to watch over and over, right? Because it's not made to be that kind of film.
No, it's a little heavy.
It is a good film, I guess.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. But yeah. Very, very different reactions, age 10 and age 31, as you'd imagine.
Right. So for me, it's like I haven't seen a movie that's quite this varied from one viewing to the next.
Right.
I mean, like, usually if I see it, it's a little better. This one, like this, now I like actually quite like this movie. So it was kind of weird to get that perspective. Did it, and when you saw it in high school, so that's I guess I'm a year older. It must have been my first year of university. The one thing I did like, the imagery, of course, I was like, wow, all this awesome imagery in a film that at the time I didn't like. I'd been to Europe the year before and had been to like the Monet house. So that was kind of cool, right? It was kind of like this had a different version of that. So
yeah. I really like, I mean, if you watch it and you're perceptive on the imagery in the afterlife and you pick up the scenes before the afterlife, you can really start tying in that it's just a replay of what the people were thinking of before the afterlife, and they just recreated in their afterlife. So I picked up kind of the early signals of what was to come, and then instead of trying to think about the plot and the storyline, then I was like, oh, okay, I'll just enjoy it for the imagery. And if for me, that going into the movie, that perspective was really enjoyable. So then I didn't really think about the plot very much, because I knew the plot was just basically going to substantiate the living life in the afterlife.
So I feel like we're like trying to like buy time here till we just start talking about Robin Williams and things, as we did last time. So
yeah, the plot in this film is not much of a plot, but I'll run through it anyway. Chris Nilsson is a pediatrician who met a beautiful and talented artist, Annie Collins, while on a boat in Switzerland. They fell in love and had 2 beautiful children. The children died in a car accident, leading Annie to have a breakdown, which Christy helped her through. Then 4 years later, Christy himself dies in another car accident. Chris is helped into the afterlife by his old buddy, Dr. Albert Lewis, and a young lady, Leona. But it turns out Leona is his daughter. Then it turns out his wife has committed suicide. With the help of Albert and a kind of Charon figure, he goes to rescue her himself. It turns out Albert is actually his son. And it turns out Charon is actually Albert. And Chris drags his wife out of hell, not with a BFG and some metal music, but with the power of love. And they decide to be reborn and love each other all over again.
Spielberg's BFG?
No, I was thinking the BFG from Doom.
Oh, okay.
The only other thing I can think of was someone storms into hell. So.
Right. Oh, yes. Getting back to Doom. Doom with an M. Yeah, it was kind of funny. We had to do a 2-for podcast today where we actually got up at 6 a.m. and did The Evil Dead, which is like the polar opposite of this movie.
He went from one to the other.
Yeah. So if we're like, in that scene where Robin Williams was like getting splattered with blood and a chainsaw, we're crossing our wheels a little bit if that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I picked up a lot of very metaphysical aspects that I can relate to in my Buddhist understanding of the movie. But the concept of hell doesn't exist in Buddhism.
Well, it doesn't really exist in this movie, right? She's very clearly creating
her own delusion. Yeah. Because the movie leads up to Annie going from her suicide, going to hell. And then when you go into it even more, you realize that she's not really in hell. She's just in her own created delusion of self-deprecation because she can't forgive herself for losing her children during life.
I guess the thing is here, they're like, it's eternal. Where I'm like, well, isn't the whole point that, the movie does eventually make the point that nothing's eternal, but it seems like the people that are hang
Yeah.
out in the spirit world would have a better perspective on that.
Well, they went to the spirit world as children, it turns out. So,
Well, not real Albert.
yeah, I guess. But then he does help him do it. So maybe he did know it was possible.
Yeah, he helps him do it, but yeah. So
But-
maybe just testing his resolve, like how God put the dinosaur boats.
Even in Christianity, like hell is not from the Bible.
Oh no,
The Bible doesn't really go into what happens in the afterlife. So the idea of I've never accepted this idea of you're punished eternally for your mistakes in life, because they talk about like a forgiving God, but anyone can go down the path and do bad things. Like, what's the point in punishing them for it? Like, what's anyone getting out of that? What's an almighty being getting out of that, especially? So the most recent thing I can think of that dealt with afterlife stuff was The Good Place, and that was just a whole deconstruction of the idea of hell. And eventually, what you actually want is just a chance to improve until you're ready to go to heaven. But
Right.
any sort of media which deals in life after death, and this is the same thing I always say about time travel media. You need to, when you come away from the film, there needs to be some message that you can apply while you're still here on Earth. If the message is just like, oh, well, it doesn't matter because you live afterwards, like none of us know that. So I need the film to do me something that I can use in my life. Like recently we covered Cloud Atlas, and you can argue back and forth whether that's actually about reincarnation. But the point of that film is that the kindnesses and the cruelties that you enact in your life is the legacy you leave behind. So whether you believe in reincarnation or heaven or any kind of afterlife or not, that's something you can enact now while you're on Earth, which I think is what any film about the afterlife needs.
Right.
Okay.
What I got, what I got out of it, and I totally with you on that one. What I got out of it is, when you really fully understand the concept of hell from a Buddhist metaphysical perspective, travel is done in the speed of thought, in consciousness. Okay, so that's why even in the spirit world, they think something and they immediately go somewhere. Whereas in the elements of what we're living in our society in life, we have a measurement of time so we can see our progress of us making decisions, so that we can look back or look forward and like, oh, I see the steps in my decision making. It's kind of an opportunity to make decisions or remake decisions and not have instant manifestation like you do in the movie, where you travel at the speed of thought. And if you had a bad thought about something, you might not want to manifest that instantly. So being in the life perspective or the life reality gives you some time to kind of buffer and decide what you want to do so you can get there. But basically, hell, in short, and I really saw this in the movie, hell is the absence of joy. It's the complete absence of joy. And that's why when I was watching a movie and Albert was prefacing Chris about, going to meet her, and you're not going to help her, and et cetera, just give it up. And he wouldn't give it up because he just kept on thinking that, if he were to tell his wife all the joyful things and find something that she can pick up that's joyful in their experiences, in their life that they shared together, that was going to be what was going to pick her up out of that self-created, self-deprecating delusion of self-punishment forever. And he didn't really understand that completely, that really hell is the absence of joy. So if there's absolutely no joy, she can't recognize joy, how is she ever going to see and recognize all the joyful things that he's trying to instill in her, to be like, remember this when we had this, and remember this when we had that? And she's like, I don't recognize it. So it never really triggered anything, because she's, in my mind, when I watch it from a Buddhist perspective, she is, if you have no absence of joy, there's like no duality, there's no high, up, down, right, left, whatever, there's no mirror effect in reality, and she's in her self-deprecating delusion of self-punishment, then all she does is continue to go lower and lower and lower and lower into the negative aspects of self. And there's nothing to mirror back. So she can't recognize any of that. And the reason why she's going so far lower into the the abyss of self-deprecation and punishment, and further away from the light, further away from joy, further away from anything that would mirror back where she's at, is basically because there's a glimmer of love for her kids and for her husband, and is because of that love that she has for them that she self-punish herself. Because if she didn't have it, then she wouldn't keep herself in that depth. But because she loved them and she felt that she was cause of their death, their premature deaths, she used that love for them to continue to push herself further into the abyss. So the only way, it makes sense for the only way for Chris to help his wife get out of this was to join her, because in the abyss, and when she joined her, then at that point she realized, oh, you are my husband, and I don't want you here with me. No, we don't want to be here. And that's when she finally caught a glimmer of something positive, something joyful, that somebody would actually join her in her misery. So that's the kind of how I saw it from the whole get-go.
You could separate that from the sort of metaphysical afterlife aspect, and you could just see it as like good advice for dealing with someone who has depression in the real world. If someone has depression, people who don't understand these kind of mental health, they're always like, oh, what have you got to be sad about? You should be happy. There are kids who are starving in Africa. It doesn't, when you're in a low in depression, nothing takes you out of it. So the thing you can do to help someone is just be there. Don't judge them. Don't try and move them. If they want to spend all day in bed, just be supportive of that. And then when they do start to move out on their own, they'll remember that you were someone who was there for them. And they won't, they'll feel that they can talk to you when they're ready to talk. Whereas if you're constantly judging or trying to help, then when they are ready to talk, they're not going to want to talk to you because they're going to think they're going to get a lecture.
Right.
I guess that's where this movie does stick with me, because I actually had to do that lesson in like real time. There was actually a 6-month period where I could not have like a normal conversation with my wife, because she was, for a couple months actually like having delusions, right? Like, and that's where this movie 20 years later did come back and, hey, you might want to check this one out again. So, it's like, if you need the lesson, you need it, but otherwise it is a bit of a heavy one.
Well, I think a lot of people, and this is a big problem in just society generally, don't get that at all. Don't get,
right.
So if you haven't felt depression, or at least been educated on it, people don't get it. So when you first watch the film and you're like, I don't get it. Why isn't she willing to why don't you just get up and leave? Right. Whereas that's not how it works. And this film really gets that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very entertaining and just kind of magical and just very colorful film on basically mental health, all around mental health. And it really puts a really interesting creative aspect of understanding mental health, because if anybody's ever dealt with somebody who's suicidal or, or depressive, and I can speak from my own personal perspective. A couple years after watching this film, I was suicidal. In college, I almost killed myself a couple times because my first marriage, my college sweetheart, it didn't work out for various reasons, and I had put so much of myself into that marriage. Like many young women, you put so much, and young men, you put so much of yourself, your image, your livelihood, everything about you is into this marriage. And then if it doesn't work out, there's nothing left. And you just kind of feel heartbroken. But in short, every single breath that I took felt like a literal knife going through my heart. Every single breath. And I didn't want to kill myself to punish anybody else or to hurt anybody else. I just wanted the pain every time I took a breath to stop. And I didn't think about anything else but to stop the pain. So suicide was at the time how I could stop being in pain every single millisecond of the day. It's like having somebody stab you every single millisecond of the day, or having a heart attack every single millisecond of the day. It's a lot of pain when you get into that aspect. So not all suicides are about punishing other people or leaving this behind. It could be as simple as, I just don't want to live in pain anymore.
Well, I'd say very few suicides are really about anyone else. It's always,
Right.
It's just that own person's problem, and not enough
Right.
media treats suicide victims as victims.
Yeah.
A lot of media concentrates on like, oh, isn't this so hard on the family or so hard on people left behind? Whereas, the victims are the people who, for whatever reason, because the support wasn't there for them, have felt like the only escape is to take their own life.
Right. I know for myself, like what got me through it was one, I have a deep belief. It's gonna kind of sound catchy, but when you're thinking about killing yourself, you either have a belief in God or you don't. Okay, just as simple as that. And I do, and still do have a deep belief and connection with God, as a Buddhist, metaphysical Buddhist. And I thought also, if I had left to reduce my suffering of the pain that I was feeling, I would leave a huge hole in my family and friends network. That would basically, no offense, my family at the time was a little bit of a wreck, and I pretty much was the fixer. I would fix everything, and I would amend things and all that kind of stuff. So it would really leave a lot of people's lives in shambles. And so the choice was live in pain and prevent others from being in suffering, or just end the pain for myself and allow others to learn how to figure it out themselves. So it is a tough decision to make, but I chose to live in the pain and work through it. It took about 5 years to finally work through the depression. But people can do it, and just kind of like the movie, Annie, she went on for a while trying to figure out how to live with it. But the thing that I noticed with Annie is that she was painting and getting further and further into her thoughts, and it wasn't really helping her. It was just getting her further into like the self-blame. But when for myself, I'll speak for myself, when you're going through that depression and suicide, what helps is actually, just like what you said, having friends and family just show up and say hi, take you out to lunch. Even if you're bummed out, take you out to lunch, give you a call, and just, shoot the crowd about just stupid things, just to make you laugh, watch funny movies, just different things, just to be with you and just change up the temperature. And it'll take time. It took 5 years, but I went out to the girl dates, the girl get-togethers, and did the stupid dances and had the luncheons and try to fake a smile and all that. But over time, it kept it going. So I had something else to look for besides my depression. And over time, you just slowly, time does heal. And then you slowly feel like, okay, well, maybe I could do this a little bit more and that a little bit more. And that's literally, it's not going to be like snap your fingers and you're done overnight. Just get out of it.
Yeah, I can't claim having like actual depression at any point, but I when I was bummed out, breaking up with the college lady and stuff, I wasn't married or anything, but I just started globetrotting, and I guess I woke up in Japan eventually. So
you stayed there.
yeah.
Well, for me, it was just being stuck in like a supermarket job in a small UK town, and the solution was just to change the scenery and
change the scenery.
Yeah.
That's basically it, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, I guess, feel like they can't change the scenery for whatever reason, though.
Well, it took me a long time to realize, because it meant, giving up my apartment and moving in with my parents for 9 months, which felt like failing.
Yeah.
But once I accepted, no, that's just a stepping stone to something else, then everything was so much easier.
Oh my God, it is, and I want to say this as well, because I know when I was going through my suicide, it's, even though you basically are a ghost walking around with practically an empty shell around the house, not living alone is really good, because because I mean, when I got my divorce, and I ended up moving in with my mom for a couple years, and I was depressed, and I would cry to myself at night, etc. But the dog and the cat would come sit with me, and we'd just sit there and watch movies. Or I would sit with my brother, my handicapped brother, or I would just kind of cook. I never had to cook. I didn't cook for 2 years. My mother cooked everything. So I would just show up and there would be food. And because I was too depressed to even want to cook, cooking was too much of a fun activity that I just didn't really have the energy to want to partake in, So I didn't cook and I was a great chef in college. But I didn't cook for 2 years. I didn't cook one thing for 2 years. But it was really nice to always have food. My mother was always there making food. There was always clean stuff. There was always life around me. So I could be walking around like a ghost, but I could still witness life. So it reminded me there's something more than what you're going through too. So eventually you slowly walk your way back into the light.
Yeah, some of this movie shows, I guess they showed the institution as being a questionable choice.
It wasn't necessarily that institutions inherently are bad. It's just this wasn't helping her. And
yeah,
I don't think you could make a film about mental health and say, yeah, but the system is fine. Like, that's not a good message.
Yeah.
I'm saying my family, that's where it did help to have people around to have like a generational house. So when my wife was having problems, she didn't need to go anywhere. She stayed home for, we kind of sort of live with her parents. I mean, we do, but they go off to the farm and back and forth. But, sister's right down the street. So there was enough of a support system. We didn't need that.
Do you think that's a cultural thing? Because I noticed in the movie, because she went to the institution and she was pretty much just left alone for the most part to just continue in her despair, except for when her husband visited her. And then at home, when basically there's no life around her, she's living up by herself, just continue to fall deeper into despair. Is that like a Western Eastern kind of thing?
Yeah,
because
it's definitely much more of a cultural thing here to stay close. Families stay together. Kids will get married and still live with their parents for quite a long time. I remember actually I was dating a girl from the Philippines, and her mum said, "Oh, you don't want to date a Western guy? I bet he left home when he was really young because his parents drive him out the house." Definitely more, because I remember it was like growing up in the UK. It was when you get to 18, you want to be out of the house as soon as you can. You want to have your own place, your own freedom, your own independence. Like everything is about I want to be able to just do what I want all the time. Whereas it's much more of you're part of the unit and much more of a society.
That's what it's like in the United States. That's what it's like in the United States for a lot of people too. Once you're 18, you're out of high school, you're out of it.
Yeah.
Unless of course you have really cool parents. But the defining factor for a lot of young adults is basically when they start dating, they don't want to bring the date home to mom and dad's house. It kind of kills the experience.
Well, that's why in Japan there's the whole industry of love hotels, because everyone lives with their parents, so you've got to have a place to go. So when you mention them to people in the West, people think it's like this real dirty idea.
I just started laughing when you said it.
But they make perfect sense in Japan, because if I live with my parents and she lives with her parents, and we all live in these tiny houses with paper walls, let's go somewhere else.
And after I was married, we had a few trips to Tokyo. And I was like, gee, we could pay $80 for a really boring business hotel, or pay $80 for a place with karaoke and bright colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
So,
oh, well, that's if you live in like a high-rise city, that. What about if you live in like the country area where it's more rural and people are more spread out?
Yeah,
is it the same thing?
I think maybe even more so, because in the country you live in big family houses, so you
right.
can have 2, 3, multiple generations all living in a big farmhouse. So you still, you feel like you're always around your family, which, like you say, is great a lot of the time. Well, you need to get away sometimes.
Yeah.
This is be a balance.
But way out in the middle of nowhere, you'll find a cluster of like 4 of these places. One's like Hawaiian themed, one is like Hello Kitty themed, It's like, and then you go, it's like, it shows like, like you can choose the room. It's got little pictures. It's like, what kind of interesting.
A lot of them now, you buy your ticket and everything through a little vending machine, so no one has to see your shame.
Yeah. You can
that's kind of like a weekend romantic escape with your
Every parking space has a little. The one I went to most last. Every parking space has a little thing you could put over your license plate, so that if anyone drives past, they won't know you're at the Love Hotel.
Is it really shameful? Because I'm looking at it like it's a weekend escape. That's a themed weekend escape.
You don't want to talk about it, right? You don't want to go to work the next day and they're like, "Well, I saw you were at the Shag Palace at the weekend."
Oh, because everybody doesn't live. Because they live with the parents. I get it. Yeah. But I had to switch my hat a little bit to understand that. Get it.
It's like buying condoms, right? Everyone needs. There's nothing wrong with it. You still don't want, your colleagues to walk past while you're doing it.
Yeah, but once my daughter was born, I was like, oh, we just got to go to the business hotel. They don't have karaoke.
Well, yeah, because you need some fun. You need some activities that, in between your private time.
Yeah, but you can't really roll in there with the whole family. That's an extra kind of weird.
That's a family vacation trip. Not just two.
You are from the deep south, Matt. Probably is a family vacation trip where you're from.
Hey, come on, Cletus. Yeah. At least I'm from the city part.
Yeah. You know what? It's really what's funny because we're talking about dating too. Is what I also found funny about this movie is that soul groups, they recognize each other. Regardless. So in terms of this family, Annie and Chris decided to reincarnate and then start it all over again. Their love affair with one another, but without the kids the second time around. But the kids, they, when Robin Williams went to the afterlife and he was going through his tour, both kids, I noticed this theme. And it really resembles what a lot of people, especially in Western society, and I think most of the world, deal with, is this feeling of not feeling like they're good enough for their parents or good enough for society or good enough for anybody. Just that's not good enough, period. Then it's not worthy. And so I noticed that in the movie, that was a continuing theme that when Robin Williams met both kids, like Marie, his daughter, eventually came out that she didn't felt pretty enough, and that's why she had picked up the persona of this Asian stewardess that her dad said was really pretty at one moment in their life. And that was the theme of her feeling like she wasn't pretty enough as his daughter. And then but once he recognized her regardless of what she looked like. And so they had the moment of recognizing. And then for his son, Ian, he had gone through the whole movie being Cuba Gooding Jr. And it came out at the very end that he just did not feel smart enough for his dad. That's why he didn't, pass school or do so well in school. And that was the arguments while he was alive. And so in the afterlife, he carried that on, not feeling like he was smart enough for his dad or not, academic enough for his father. And that was a misconception that both the kids had about their parents, that it get carried on into the afterlife. And then when Robin Williams recognized that, his character recognized that, he recognized it was his son. And so I noticed that theme was a common theme. They found a really creative way to portray it. But it's a common theme that many people suffer with. It goes into the mental health issue as well, is that many people have mental health issues. One of the themes that continue to come up in their life is that they just don't feel like they're worthy of meeting up to the expectations of their parents, their spouse, their society, whatever. They're just not good enough. But at the very end, when they go into the afterlife, they realize that they've always been good enough. They've always been worthy, and there's nothing that they could do wrong because it's all just an experience that they're learning and growing from. So that's what I found is interesting.
I was thinking with the family hanging out in the end. I mean, there's not technically a family dynamic anymore. They're basically they should technically be on an even keel. It's just beings at that point. So
you said like it's a thing in the Western world, but Japan has one of the worst suicide rates in the developed world. And I'm 100% convinced a big part of it is because there's this huge push for kids who are way too young to get good grades. Like I have students who are like 10 or younger telling me they study for like 5 hours at the weekend. I have never studied for 5 hours in my entire life. And I don't plan to.
No, my daughter's studying enough, and my wife and I, hey, could probably chill out a little bit on this. But she starts to like stress out a little bit. She's like not studying, it seems. But I mean, she's not getting it from you, but I'm sure she's still getting it from her peers, from her teachers.
Yes. It's like it's a whole societal thing, but there are definitely there are parents who push it as well.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm Asian. I get it. It's the whole like you got to be like smart and you everything, and it is rampant in Asian culture all over the world. Even as an Asian American, it is rampant. Get good grades, get to college. Everybody be a doctor. that whole stereotype, but. The problem is that then you end up living your life playing out somebody else's template of what they want for themselves that they couldn't get, so they just push it onto the kids. And so you never really created your own life. You never really created your own vision, your own goal, your own image of yourself or what you were going to be, your own image of what kind of marriage, relationships, friendships you were going to have, because you just adopted the programming of your parents and your culture. And so when you don't live up to somebody else's predicted programming, you become depressed and you start, taking yourself out. Depression is a very common thing, or feeling like you're not good enough. And that's a common thing that a lot of people, not just Asian cultures, experience, but I think other cultures and people in other cultures experience it as well in different ways that just show it a little bit differently. But in Western culture, in the United States, there's a lot of people who just feel like they're just not meeting up expectations of their parents and letting the parents down. They're the black sheep of the family, or the loser, or whatever these labels are. And all it is basically picking up somebody else's programming. Most people aren't walking around living out their own programming that they created for themselves.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's so much. I mean, nature versus nurture, right? You end up becoming one of your parents or both of your parents to a certain extent. Let's see, what are some bad habits I picked up?
I got my swearing from my mum.
I think our kids get this swearing from me too.
Like all of my friends say the first time they met my mum, she said the C word.
I didn't even learn the C word until a couple years ago.
I'm pretty sure it had come out of my mouth before I'd started elementary school.
It's his first word.
Yeah. There's all these acronyms. I don't even know these street slang acronyms. I always ask my husband, I'm like, what does a Karen mean? Everybody says Karen on these posts. And I'm like, what is a Karen? And he's like, oh, okay. And so when these pop culture slangs and words come up, I'm like, what does this mean? I don't understand what that means. I keep seeing it being popped up, and so my husband educates me on street slang all the time. Because I'm like, oh, okay, now I know what "Let's Go Brandon" means. Okay.
Yeah, I fall a bit behind living in Japan on some of the more up to date slang.
Yeah,
I guess.
People are like, what is up with Americans? They're making up their own words.
I just remember
all words are made up.
I just remember being in high school and about the time, well, probably like a year or two before me, but yeah, just someone coming in mid 90s and that's fat. Huh? That's just the time I remember hearing like a slang for the first time. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I don't even think that one ever took on. I mean, never took off.
That took on a bit in like surfer culture.
Yeah,
I remember
guess.
being a thing in the
People
UK.
said for like 3 weeks, maybe.
You'll spell it with a PH though.
Right. Well, I didn't.
Yeah, the PH.
I didn't understand that when I heard it because it was being spoken at the time. So,
Amazingly, we're this far into a Robin Williams podcast, and we've barely talked about him.
yeah, I said we were like chomping at the bit to get to him, but we haven't done there. Which
What about all the other characters? And we're getting to him. We're talking about the other characters. I mean, I want to talk about the Shrink because the Shrink is very pivotal as well. Because he basically said in like the scene where he was talking to Robin Williams, and they were talking to each other, kind of having a kind of a bromance moment. And he said that this is the thing that I actually wrote down. He said, teacher, parent, these labels prevent us from seeing who we truly are to each other. So I was like, oh, that's very good because it basically just breaks down that all these labels, all these avatars that we put ourselves in lifetime after lifetime, experience after experience, and even in the spirit world, because you can travel in the speed of thought and change your persona and the scene in the speed of thought. These are all we're just flipping through kind of like inserts in a play or in a children's book. But what is really real is the energy, and that's really all we are to each other. It's just energy playing out just different things for our own experience. So there is no level of higher, lower, teacher, parent, black, white, everything else. These are all just aspects of a story for the play that we're playing in. I like that part.
I liked the message. I didn't like that the film tried to play it as a twist 3 separate times.
Yeah. They really needed a Buddhist correspondence when they're writing some of this, just to kind of tie in some of the loose ends.
The first time with the daughter, I was like, oh, that was great. And like, she really sold it. Michelle, is it Michelle Yeoh?
Oh, no.
Michelle Chow.
Yeah, Rosalind Chow.
Rosalind Chow, yeah.
Yeah, both Star Trek actors.
Also, they both were in Shang-Chi as well. So.
Yeah.
The way her like voice breaks right as she starts to give it away and stuff, that was really well played. So I thought that scene was great. And then it does it again with the son, and I was like, oh, okay, well, you mean you've already done this once. And then they do it again with the other guy, and I was like, okay, like it's not a twist anymore.
It's predictive. It's predictive. That's why there's not much of a plot, because it's so predictive,
I thought it was going to turn around at the end, and actually Robin Williams was Annie, and the actress was Christy.
That would be cool. One thing. Whoa, there goes your mic.
Yeah.
One thing I kind of, I didn't see the movie for a 20-year period almost, and in that time, I guess because not Annie, the daughter's name. Harry.
I don't remember her fake name.
Marie.
Somewhere I'd actually thought, like, I guess because she was kind of tomboyish, I kind of got it in my mind that he had 2 sons in this movie, and one of them had just like actually changed gender roles.
But see, yeah.
And now I'm like, I'm disappointed that's not what happened.
Yeah.
That's why she had that complex of not feeling that she was pretty enough of a daughter for him. And throughout the whole movie, she ended up playing the Asian stewardess as a decoy to be pretty enough for her dad in the afterlife, because she is kind of a tomboy. But we all know tomboys turn out to be butterflies when they get older, anyways.
Yeah. And poor Rosalind Chow had to do this movie because they just weren't giving her any roles in Deep Space Nine. If you've ever seen it, there's like always an excuse why Keiko's not there this week.
She's like eternally pregnant or something.
Yeah. It's like there's just the wheel of fortune as to why she's not there that particular week. But
it's because he wants to spend time with his real true love, which is Dr. Bashir.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. But let's see. Max von Sydow, we've talked about him before. He's
great. I mean, he's just doing standard Max von Sydow stuff, but he's great. So
that's fine. You want him to do that. So and that's a fun name to say.
I mean, he's playing not even remotely a villain in this.
Yeah. He's a helper. Well, no one's a villain in this afterlife. Which
the villain is just what you create for yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, the afterlife was very interesting because there was a lot of, kind of images, like the standard kind of Judeo-Christian image of hell. And but at the very end, you see that it's only self-created delusion and despair and self-deprecation. And as soon as somebody no longer wants to experience that, it in the speed of thought, pop into a new experience. So everybody in this concept of hell can pop into a new experience if they no longer want to experience it. But then we go into the whole concept of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and even mental health is, will take you into the afterlife, into this experience. And the thing that about the afterlife and the scenes of the afterlife with the hell images is that, ghosts, they replay to themselves. Okay, that, like in Buddhism is like, oh, you're just a ghost. You just replay the same thing over and over again, like a record. You replay the same lie, the same blames, the same. That's what a ghost is. A ghost is just a walking recorder that's just looping it over and over and over again because it just can't get over it or can't get past it. Because, like I said, hell is the absence of joy. So that's what is going on with all those characters in hell, especially when they're walking over them to try to get around to go and find where Annie has put her little version of hell in place, is that they were all basically like when Robin Williams stopped with this one guy who thought was his father, or he thought that Robin Williams was his son, and they were like, oh, I don't know you, and so forth. That character was just saying, oh, are you my son? Are you going to come and get me? Or, he was in his own little version of self-blame, self-punishment, never forgiving himself, never learning from his lessons and moving forward to take the next step to try to make amends for what he did. So, and learn and grow from it. But he just kind of got stuck in that. You just get stuck. That's the whole thing about what all those little faces in the ground, they all are stuck in their own depression and their own pits of depression, and they're so stuck in that energy they can't get out of it, and they just replay over and over again. So when he's stepping over people, they're like, oh, my mom, oh, my son. They're just going over and over again the same things that they blame themselves over and over again. They're doing this for eternity. So I really like how they portrayed that aspect of hell, because there's really metaphysical to kind of the concepts of what hell really is, which is basically a replay of depression.
So I guess we'll take it Dante style and start at the bottom. What does your hell look like? Luke, I think you were going for Doom.
Well, see, yeah, I'm so used to the Christian image of hell, which is just fire, demons, violence, pain, which ultimately is just, it makes sense to us when we're alive, but that's all transient things. Like an eternity of pain, how long do you still care, right? Like,
right.
That's why you often, anytime like a comedy does a scene in hell, and it's just like everyone's really bored of it. Like,
yeah,
demons are bored of torturing you. You're bored of getting tortured.
because the thing this movie made a really good point when you look at all these different characters in quote quote hell, is that the thing that's keeping them in hell is not the fire and the brimstone and the sucky environment. It's the replay of their regrets in life and their despairs and their self-blame in life.
Because that
over and over and over again.
That Christian version of hell makes sense if you think of it as this was created to keep peasants in line.
Yeah, I think,
but it doesn't come from any philosophical place or any meaningful place. It comes from, oh well, if you steal from the king, you're going to suffer on fire forever. So don't do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even Robin Williams said in one of this hell scenes when he was talking to Annie, his wife, he said, good people end up in hell because they can't forgive themselves. And literally every single person that he stepped around their head to get to Annie's place couldn't forgive themselves.
Yeah.
It's stuck up to their face in the samsara, right?
And to the samsara, yeah. But the minute...
I was just going to throw out, I think I've said on the podcast before, I defer to the Bill and Ted hell. At this point.
Militant
Yeah.
hell is the coolest hell, but
I want to go for the coolest one. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it really makes me really, when you start getting really metaphysical and you start getting a better understanding of, I don't know, better or worse, it's just the perception, a more understanding of consciousness, then what is hell to you? I mean, what is hell to you, guys?
Yeah, I would go with the idea of no hope, because if you got a little bit of hope, if you think today might be better or tomorrow might be a little better than today, it's hard to get stuck in hell.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess just being stuck. Like the worst I've ever felt was when I was just dull job, dull life, nothing going on. So that's my hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's closer to this one than the fire and brimstone.
Right.
Because that I remember can't believe I'm gonna throw positive thoughts towards in Spider-Man when he sold his marriage to the devil.
Yeah.
The line was that the devil used to buy souls and torture them for eternity, but because they knew they were being tortured because they'd achieved something, it didn't work. So just being, it hurts forever, but I'm enduring this because I'm a good man or whatever. That's not that bad compared to losing something, losing your hope, your love, these positive things.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what, I mean, there's the Buddhist understanding of hell is just basically just kind of like reincarnating over and over again, undoing your mistakes with the same mistakes, with the same characters over and over and over and over again, just never learning from. And so you just reincarnate over and over again, trying to undo mistakes and learn from them, and then we continuing to make the same mistakes with the same people. That's just like it's like the mice going over and over again and just not getting anywhere. That's like the concept of the Buddhist hell. It's just never learning and just spinning your wheels. Some people feel like that when they go to their life, and they're like, why does this feel so familiar? Why does this feel so familiar? Why does it feel like I've made this mistake 1,000 times and I still never learned my lesson? I'm still crying about the same thing over and over and over again. That's the concept of hell, and technically in Buddhism. Or in this movie, doing the same, running through the same images over and over again in the afterlife, and never getting out of it, getting stuck in that emotion. But for me, I don't really know what like the concept of hell would be, because I don't know what life is like without joy, hope, kind of like duality, the opposite of anything negative, all those positive emotions. I don't know what life is like without that. And also, I know and have a connection to whatever you want to call it, Christ consciousness, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. It's that spirit inside you that's always inside you. So if you want to go to quote, quote, hell with that spirit, you can go do that. But recognizing, understanding that that's always going to be with you, whatever experience you go to, it's almost like you always have a compass back home. You just have to choose to acknowledge it at some point. So I honestly, for myself, don't know what concept of hell would be like.
I guess you wouldn't want to dwell on it too much, as this movie, if you do get mired in your own hell or someone else's own hell, you're likely to get stuck there. So making it lighter, I guess now we're going to create our own heavens. Now, it's what dreams may come. Watching it the past few times, I've been like, well, this afterlife and the dream realm, I guess, are pretty much similar. So it's almost like, well, I've been to a dream space multiple times. It's almost like a horse park or something. I'm not into horses or anything, but it's
right.
Manicured lawn. It's got some picnic tables. There's some relatively nice buildings around, and I've been to that dream place multiple times. And to me, I'm like, man, I feel that's not what I would sit here and tell you would be my heaven, but maybe it is.
And that's even harder. Like when you ask people, what is your version, like when you really fully understand hell, what is your version of hell? People are like, oh, I'm not going to stump about that. But it's easier to go negative than it is to go positive. Because then if you ask them, what is your version of heaven? And you see the kids, basically their version of heaven was kind of, aspects in their life that they had put into fantasy world. I don't know.
I don't think I have a version of heaven because there's no one thing I want to be in forever.
Right.
Right. Well, I should mention my dream space is kind of like it's kind of like a home base, right?
Yeah.
As the dream or the afterlife spaces are in this movie, you can go somewhere else.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to have your home base.
But yeah. Beyond is the heaven is. I feel like what we're seeing in this film is not eternity. This is like the first step. Because like he says, oh, you've made yourself a body, but I assume they get beyond that.
Well, no,
and then you're just a consciousness and you go free. Right?
His son, under the guise of Albert, is like I was at the higher levels for a while. You know,
he just came to pick up his dad, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I think it's harder to come up with your version of heaven than it is to come up with your version of hell.
Oh yeah.
Because when you have unlimited creation ability, where do you start? And we usually create our lives and we create our versions of heaven, our version of paradise based on what we already know or what we've been exposed to. Everything we've created is based off of old templates that we've been exposed to. That's why it's really hard to come up with creative thought and creative vision.
Well, that's
why,
that's the thing. If you give someone, here's a sheet of paper, draw whatever you want, or you give, George Lucas an unlimited budget, then what do you do with that? But if you give someone limitations and try and take this idea and do something, that's when your creative juices get going. It's solving problems is much easier than, well, I can do anything. What do I do?
Yeah, because with the problems, you have some kind of framework that there's some limitations, there's some things to work around, so you can start creating around it. But if it's a completely blank, you're like, I don't know where to start. And so, because all we do is we mirror back to each other images and ideas, and then we work off of those templates. That's all we ever do. Everything you ever create in your life, but that's how you created yourself. That's how you created your home. That's how you created the type of relationships you have, the family, everything. Everything has been picked up templates from things that you've been exposed to in your family, your friends, TV, society. You just pick up different things that you like, but were they really your own creation? That's the kicker.
It almost seems obvious once you hear it, but I just recently someone was telling me the idea of just like dream interpreting your life. Like when I'm talking to you right now, I kind of think of it like I try and interpret it the same way I would if I were talking to people in a dream. I mean, within reason, obviously you could use that in a way where you are going nuts. So do it responsibly, I guess. But
yeah, that's why the Buddhists always tell you just experience. You're here for the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can just run yourself ragged trying to overanalyze and analyze and all that kind of stuff. Just go for the experience and do your best to just have a good experience. That's why samsara is just a journey. It's just a journey. It's just an experience. But the thing that I found at the very end is they made it to the heaven. They got their family together. They have this beautiful created world of their heaven. And what does people in heaven want to do? They want to reincarnate and have another love story. And so falling in love again in life is their version of heaven. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people focus so much on what's beyond, and that's very interesting. That's all well and good, but it's probably worth focusing on what you're doing at the moment.
Well, like I said, a film about the afterlife has to have a message that is make the most of this one.
Right.
If the message is, it doesn't matter because heaven's nice. That's kind of a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you, because in the Western world, this is my interpretation, people look at life and they look forward to the afterlife, but they don't look forward to after the afterlife if they decide to reincarnate, because you're going to reincarnate into some kind of physical experience, even if it's going to be 1 trillion infinite years. At some point in your existence, you're going to reincarnate into something. Maybe not Earth, maybe not in this dimension, maybe another dimension, another galaxy, another universe, another species, whatever. There's just so many things to create in the ethers. But the thing is that in Buddhism, that's why you always see the images of the infinity circle, and then you have the images of samsara where you born, you grow old, you go to the afterlife, then you come back and you reincarnate, do another experience. It just goes, and the whole point of that is the things that you do in your life will influence how you plan your afterlife, will influence how you reincarnate in your next experience in samsara, will influence what you want to do next in your afterlife, which will influence your next incarnation. We're just we're jumping off of one template to another template and picking up the parts that we really like from the last experience. So in the movie, in the very end, you have Annie and Chris decide to get born again and meet each other, but this time they're kids at a lake park, and then their boats hit each other instead of the last life where they were literally in the big boats and they crashed into each other on accident. But there was a smaller version, so they picked the way the meet cute that they met on the last life, and they liked that so much that they replayed. That's how they're going to meet cute again in the second life, but in a smaller version. So a lot of times we pick the things that we really like and we replay it again. We'll do like part again because that was fun, but then we'll add some other elements into the next experience that we want to experience again. So there's a whole thing in Buddhism about pre-planning your life and the experiences you want to go through. It's kind of like when you want to go on vacation, you meet with a travel agent to see what kind of excursions you're going to have. Maybe you're going to have some lessons. Maybe you're going to meet some characters. Also, you might do a little bit growing spiritually in your soul growth. You're going to have some challenges because if it's too easy, you're going to get bored and it's not be real enough. All that kind of stuff. So you pre-plan that and then you go into it. But there's a whole gap of time before you incarnate into your next life. So a lot of Buddhists, what they do is they think about the things that they're doing in this life to see if, am I doing the best and am I having the most positive and the most experience and getting the most out of this samsara experience, so that when I go into my next life, I have some information and be like, I really, really like that experience. I want to do this experience. Maybe next time I decide to go again, but do it a little bit different. So that's what we're constantly doing, is just doing this infinity circle with our souls over and over again. Afterlife, in life, afterlife, in life. So that's the difference between the Eastern mindset of afterlife and the Western mindset, is that there's no infinity.
Yeah, I don't know. One and done seems like a weird concept. So to me, as far as a life is concerned, and yeah, it's like I don't. Do you really want to play the role you're playing right now forever? No. It's fun for now.
That's why the Akashic records in the movie where you have the library where the shrink works, he likes to work in the library because all those different books are everybody's lives, and he's just kind of like, this would be interesting to kind of go into hell with Annie because most people aren't able to get out of that. So if I can witness how somebody does that, then I can be like, a new experience to add into the Akashic records that nobody has been able to overcome. This will open up creation to something different. So he wanted to witness that and be part of that and see how they did that.
I think this is a quote from Game of Thrones, but it was, the person who never reads only lives one life, but the reader lives 1,000.
Yeah, I don't get it when I talk to someone. They're like, I don't read. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, even if you don't read, you watch movies. Watching movies is just getting information.
Yeah. So you got that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess there's the like when we have in Japan, you'll ask kids or adults too, what is your hobby? And some of them are like watching movies, and it's like that's not really. It's too passive. That's not a hobby,
Yeah.
I'm like reading. I'm like, well, that's now a little active, right? So I'll take that as an acceptable answer. I mean, if it's a real quiet student or just give me an answer, I won't argue at all. But yeah, but
no, if you really want to experience another life, it's video games, mate. So I do briefly actually, the imagery in this film of where he's in the painting, that looks so good. That's such amazing. I don't even want to know how they did it because it just looks incredible. But quite a while after this film, 2011, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, the whole game is made to look like a Monet painting. And so stuff that's close to you is you can kind of see it, and then further away it's just vague brushstrokes. And the reason I think that's relevant, not only because it's a similar art style, Robin Williams was famously a huge Zelda fan. Like, he literally named his daughter Zelda after the Legend of Zelda games. And the pair of them did adverts together in like 2012. And that was the last Zelda game released before he died. So I like to hope that he played it and enjoyed that art all over again.
Hopefully made the connection.
Yeah.
I would imagine he might have. I mean, you might. I do love hearing when there's stars or musicians. I don't even remember making that movie. I don't remember making that album. Robin Williams probably could have said that for things in the early 80s, but
yeah,
he probably remembered making this one.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the great part about life is like you might surprise yourself. Like, I never thought ever in a million years that I would be doing X, Y, Z. That's never crossed my mind, but I guess I'm doing it, and it's actually kind of cool. So allow yourself to be surprised.
Yeah, I certainly never planned out what I'm doing. So
I've never planned anything.
I didn't even plan my vacation in university. We just got a ticket to Lisbon and saw where it went.
I just saved up all my money and flew to Tokyo, and I'm still here.
So you don't necessarily need the travel agent, but sometimes it's good. It is a little more comfortable that way sometimes. But
uncomfortable.
Yeah, I guess speaking of students, we need to go teach some students soon.
Yeah, I got to go have a shower because I'm fresh out of the gym. So,
and Ron, I read your most recent book. Is that still the newest one? Because last time I talked to you is when I learned about the most recent one. Unless there's a more recent one.
The most recent one is Buddhist Mandalas: Christ Consciousness of a Multidimensional Merkaba. That's the one with Tara with the 3 heads.
Right. Okay.
Is that the one?
That's the one I just finished recently. So.
Okay. What did you think about it?
I enjoyed it, and actually my dad listened to our last one with Kundan, and he was like, "Oh, I want to read the book." I was like, "Maybe you should actually go to her first one."
Just in the background. Yeah, but did he read the first one, or did he just go straight to the second one?
I sent him to the first one because he was just interested in what we were talking about with Buddhism last time, and he's read books on it before. But I mean, he's an Episcopal dude. He goes all the time. But the one thing I'll give the Episcopal Church definitely is that they're relatively open-minded. Like if they're going to be into organized religion, it's not the worst choice. They've had gay priests, women priests for years. They don't really push anything too hard.
I went to Catholic school. They are not open-minded.
No, they're less open-minded.
Well, the thing is that everybody's in different level of consciousness in their understanding of everything. And that is totally fine because that is the template in which they're creating from, so, if everybody was in the same level at the same time, there wouldn't be a lot of dichotomy, a lot of contrast. And then the contrast is what creates uniqueness, and creativity comes from the contrast. So a lot of Buddhists understand it. They're like, you be whatever you want to be. You're good. You do whatever you want to be because you're providing me contrast so that I can create the best that I want to experience because of you.
And I do make sure to ask the authors, where is the best place to go for this?
Yeah. So, so my website is Merkaba Chakras, Merkaba chakras, like your 7 chakras.com. All my books will be there. I have one more book, the 3rd installment of Buddhist Mandalas, but I'm actually going to hold off for a couple years because there is not a Buddhism book on consciousness that I'm aware of that actually goes over humanity's life lessons regarding a pandemic. And pandemics in history change humanity's trajectory. And I really want to include humanity's current huge life lesson with the COVID-19 pandemic and how we get out of it, how we find compassion, how we find empathy, how we find forgiveness, and how we find unity in each other to help each other through hard times. And there is not, like Tara and a lot of other Buddhist teachers speak about pandemics in history. That's where they get a lot of the compassion. But I haven't seen one put in recent times. So I want to wait and observe humanity. And then I want to close out the Buddhist Mandalas trilogy series with that last book to kind of close out basically the holographic reality in which we create and love through.
So we can stick with the second one for now then.
Stick with the second one. Okay. Stick with the second one for now. it will be interesting, and then hopefully we'll see what happens. I have a couple other books. I want to get back to my Buddhism archaeology folklore book, where I follow Buddha's folklore of Lemuria, and then go through all the different Polynesian islands and just get copyright-free images of all their pyramids and megaliths on the top of their mountains, which substantiate 100% the Buddhist folklore of the ancient Lemurian spiritual culture.
Yeah, I do want to try the diving into Yonaguni at some point. I mean,
oh my goodness, that's a good one.
I mean,
yeah, you're right there in Japan.
Our company took us on a trip, but we were 2 islands over. Also a very cool island, but not. That was Miyakojima, and there's Ishigaki, and then it's not Yonaguni's not the name of the island, I think, but I guess I could.
Yonaguni is really remote.
Yeah,
you have to kind of like. Yeah,
almost in Taiwan by the time you're there.
Yeah, it's not as close as they're saying. Yonaguni is really, really remote. It's quite a trek. It's not very touristy for the most part. You're really just going to go and see the underwater pyramid. It's not like a pyramid, like looking pyramid, but it's a pyramid. It's a megalithic structure underneath there. And it falls right in like that, right in line with the Buddhist folklores of the ancient Lemurian people.
And did you know we do have a Keystone tomb not so far away?
Yeah, I've been to it.
Okay. Well, I didn't know till my daughter had like a school trip there. Like, what?
I didn't know till I was at a museum and it said go this way to see the tomb on top of the hill, and I was like, all right, sure.
It's always on top of a hill, you guys. It's always on top of the hill. That was where all the people that survived the mega flood went to, was the top of the hills. And that's why they always put the pyramids and megaliths at the top of the hill so everybody can see it. So anyways, but that's where you can go for all the materials, macabachakras.com.
Luke, you want to do our thing?
If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can find it on Twitter at MLSFS or also on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Just search Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary. If you want to hear the music you heard in this podcast, you can hear more of Matt's music by going to rovingsagemedia.bandcamp.com. And if you want to help keep the podcast online, you can support us by going to patreon.com/podcastius.
Podcastius.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Anyway, Galt, thank you again for joining us. I like getting into these metaphysical movies. So, we spend a lot of time in the isn't that cool sci-fi, but it's, nice to get into the different areas. I mean, is this one even a sci-fi? Not quite.
Nah,
it
sci-fi,
looks
fantasy,
like a sci-fi.
philosophy,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. But now you and the listeners at home can all go to hell.
Or think of a heaven, or think of what it's you.
That's easier to think of the hell, isn't it?
Always easier to come up with than heaven.
Coming soon, Spider-Man, The Dragon's Challenge, Twilight Zone, the movie, The Matrix Reloaded.